him to do anything that Christ himself hadn't done. Though he was rich, he made himself poor. And the ramifications of this, implications of it, is just absolutely incredible. Let me give you an example. A man has a wife that genuinely, out of not his fault, does not love him, is mean-spirited, rejects him, and everything else. And he needs a reason for going on in that marriage. Again, Jesus is not asking him to do anything he didn't do. He loved his bride when his bride didn't love him. He sought her when she was soiled. I mean, I've tried now, since I heard that statement several months ago, I've tried to go through and find one thing Jesus has asked me to do that he hasn't done. I can't find it. And that's our motivation. Now, I'll tell you one last thing. There have been so many times when you can't find motivation in yourself, in the fruit of your ministry, or even in those people who supposedly you're supposed to serve. But the thing that keeps you from walking out the door is the crucified one. This is all for him. If you're preaching, like when you go to the mission field, you know, and you go out into a plaza and you begin to preach with your little bullhorn or your pulpit and your tracts, and man, everything seems to be going well. People are listening. Satan will always raise up one person, demon-possessed, I don't know what they are. They just start screaming at you. And guess what? The whole crowd turns on you. Who would have thought? The whole crowd turns on you, and they throw you and your tracts and your little bullhorn out in the street and laugh at you. It's going to take a lot more than love for people to have you pick all that stuff back up and walk back into the plaza again. You know, I'm reminded of the Moravian boys. Shall the Lamb not have receive the full reward for his suffering? So that's why we go in to the ministry. The other thing, realize it's just the great privilege. Spurgeon, I believe, borrowing from Martin Luther, hit it right on the head. If you're called to be Christ's minister and you're asked to be king, how dare you step down from such a high position to such a low one? So, here's the thing. Almost everything is cured by growing in your knowledge of God. Those who know God, they know their God, they will be strong. They will do great things because they know Him. You see, during the COVID, like people are going, what's God doing? What's God doing? It's almost like when you start asking that question, you're trying to hold God hostage. What do I mean? God, I'm going to be miserable, sad, broken, and doubting until you meet my demands, which are, you tell me what's going on. For the most part, God is not going to tell you what's going on. Why? Well, here's the reason. I have a friend, many years in Peru. He was so faithful to me. He put his life in jeopardy. I mean, just, you name it. He showed faithfulness. If he walked in those doors right now and said, just screamed out, throw me the keys to your Jeep, I'd throw him the keys to my Jeep. And you would say, well, why are you doing that? You don't know what he's going to do with your Jeep. Well, I don't know what he's going to do with my Jeep. I don't have to, because I know him. And I know whatever he does with my Jeep will be right. You don't need to know what God's doing, ever. You just need to know who God is. If He is who He says He is, whatever He's doing is right. And so it all comes back down to the character of God. Is there another question? Okay, we'll preach then. Okay, there's one.
You share a little bit on stewardship, responsibilities at home, in the ministry, balancing that.
Yeah, Romans 12, 1 and 2. It's all right there. The will of God is perfect. It's perfect. So, I'm a single missionary. I have the liberty to work 18 hours a day in the ministry. I'm a single missionary. I am dead to those commands about a wife and family. And those commands are dead to me. They make no demands upon me. None. The moment I take a wife, there's a whole bunch of commands that wake up. And you should know commands take time. Obedience to them takes time. So if I'm going to, let's say I'm an obedient single missionary and I'm working 18 hours a day in the ministry, 16 hours a day in the ministry. And now I have a wife. I have to allocate enough time to this wife to fulfill God's commands with regard to a wife. Then when children come, I have to allocate more time to those children. Now, if you say, you know, I'm going to, like I've heard preachers say, sacrifice my family on the altar of service to God, you're actually doing the same thing Adam did. You're blaming God. You're saying your will is not perfect. Therefore, you've put me in a position, God, where I have to disobey you in this area in order to obey you in this area. That's not true. But what is coming out is that you are self-willed and you don't qualify as an elder. You're self-willed. Your ambition is ministry. And your ambition is not the will of God. You see, if in God's providence, and I trust in the overarching providence of God, I have been given a wife, I am to allocate time to her, and if I don't, I'm a disobedient man and disqualified for the ministry. See, the guys, you're going to see such a flip-flop. Do you honestly think, like, my number one work is dealing with missionaries every day. That's what I do. All right. But, you know, I'm asked to do really big conferences. Do you really think that's some kind of a mark of having arrived? Do you really think that's impressive to God? Really? I mean, are you that carnal? Matter of fact, I think sometimes COVID is God's judgment on Reformed Bible conferences. What about the guy who labors with the average 75 to 100 people for 50 years of his life as a real pastor? Now, I'm not just saying this to be cute. I believe it. On the day of judgment, what a flip-flop. And you young men need to understand that. Here's a philosophical question. Why would God take the most beautiful rose He ever made and plant it in a forest through which no man, no angel, no sentient being ever walked? How does God get glory from that rose? No one sees it. He gets glory from the rose because He sees it every day. Every day. And He delights in what He has made. So, your only concern is hiddenness and obedience in the simple commands. That's it. That's your only concern. That's it. Any other question? Yes, sir.
You speak on the catechizing people that are in this flock and have got kind of that personal going to them and explaining things to them as opposed to like small groups.
Yeah. Wow, that's a big question. And here's why. I can only see, look, let me show you something. Look at 1 Timothy. In chapter 3. Now, I've made a statement that has made a lot of people mad, but I'm going to say it again because it's so true. I say, I know Arminians who are far more Reformed than you Reformed guys. Now, I am Calvinistic, and the Reformation was principally Calvinistic. But the point I'm trying to make is we've gone through 15 years of a lot of young men thinking they were Reformed because they had intellectually grasped some form of a Calvinistic soteriology. That does not make you Reformed. And I'm using the word Reformed just because people are using it. I don't necessarily like the word because the Reformers didn't call themselves Reformers. They just wanted to be biblical. So here's the thing. You and I have no right to do anything except that which is mandated by Scripture. If you want to call that the regulative principle or whatever you want to call it, it's just true. And this demonstrates the lack of the fear of God among preachers. Either ignorance or a lack of the fear of God. One of the two. If you look in 1 Timothy 3, Paul says in verse 14, I am writing these things to you, hoping to come to you before long. But in case I am delayed, I write so that you will know how one ought to conduct himself in the household of God. How can one know how to conduct himself in the household of God? Through what Paul wrote. Through what is written. Now, let's just go back. How many times in the law, in the Decalogue, do not add to, do not take away? How many times? When Moses is given orders to build the tabernacle, God does not say, okay, these are some of the things I want if you could figure out how you're going to do it. He didn't say that. He didn't ask his opinion. He didn't ask for a strategy. He didn't ask for him to be inventive. He said, you be careful to do everything that was shown to you on that mountain. Now, if that's with regard to a tabernacle that was only a symbol or a type of a greater reality, how dare ministers take the church and do what they do with them? Now, I'm going to get around to your question, but it's a bigger foundational problem. You see, we're going to grow our Sunday school by recruiting teachers, and you're going to violate what James said. You're going to violate Scripture to do it, aren't you? You're going to recruit Sunday school teachers. Well, we know they're not that good a teacher, but if they start studying, then they'll learn to teach. Oh, really? Who told you that? Who gave you the right to do that? Nobody. You invented that. He said, be very careful, not many of you be teachers. You see how twisted? Men, I will walk in a room like this where everybody believes they're in a biblical church, and I realize that we're not even talking the same language. They don't have a clue what they're talking about. Because you just go ahead and do things. I asked a question one time I had to preach at a big convention to music ministers. Why on earth, they asked me? I can't hold a tune, can't play an instrument. But I thought I'd do this. Before I get started with my sermon, I would just like to have just people stand up and give comments. As you music directors studied through from the book of Genesis all the way to the book of Revelation, pulled out every text on worship, and then submitted yourself to that, what are some of the things the Lord taught you? Nobody had done it. And I said, you do know that God killed 2 music directors in Leviticus 10, don't you? Do you see? So the kid plays guitar and he's got really nice hair. You're going to be responsible for putting that silly little boy up there on the day of judgment. You have no idea how fearful this is. A minister you should not run from a ministerial calling because of demands. You should run from it because of the one who's giving it. You're a steward. And you can only do that which is written. Nothing else. You have no right. No right. So look here. He says here in verse 15, he calls the church the household of God. The church of the living God. Whenever you hear living God, there's usually a battle going on. God's about to smite somebody. I believe Paul is using this language not just to counter the idolatry in Ephesus, but to say, hey, hold on. This is a God who makes alive and kills. This is a God who goes to war for his own name. This is a God who loves his bride, and it's his bride. It's his bride. And how do you know how to handle his bride? Only one way, what is written. What is written. Let me share with you. I said this to a group of young men yesterday, I think. So imagine a great and mighty and fearful king is going to go on a long journey, and you're his steward. And he loves his wife more than anyone else in the kingdom. She's everything to him. So he calls you and he says, here are the decrees that I have set out as absolute monarch. This is what you will do for my wife while I'm gone. You will be held accountable for it. He goes on a long journey. But you as a steward who so loved the king, you realize that the people are getting bored with him. They haven't seen him in a while. And they're getting really bored with his wife because, well, that plain, simple elegance just don't cut it today. So you dress her up like a whore and you drag her in front of carnal men, hoping to win them back to the king. What will the king do when he returns? He will kill every one of you. That's exactly what evangelicalism is today. That's exactly what it's done. And that's why our country is being judged. Because of the preachers. They've dressed up the bride of Christ like a whore. What is it? Oh, we got to make our Sundays to draw them in. Really? If you use carnal means to draw in carnal men, you'll have to continue using carnal means. Now you say, boy, you're using rough language. Better now than later. The regulative principle, what has God commanded? So let's say that we have a Sunday school, and you got all these Sunday school teachers, and a lot of them you've put them in a position where they're teaching heresy. Because they don't even know. They're not teachers. But we got to have teachers. Okay, make a decision, Bible or small groups. Small groups can be useful. But I want you to look at something. Do you realize most churches, they have a few men that call themselves elders, who then do most of the administration and preaching, and then they hire a staff to do what? Pastor, basically. They're not elders, they're staff. So, do the people ever come in contact with an elder? When does a child in your church come under the counsel and watch care of an elder? In most churches, not until they're 20, 30, till they get out of singles group. Do you see how you can just start doing things that seem right, and yet there's no biblical grounds for it whatsoever? I'm not saying you can't have small groups. What I'm saying is most of the time we pastor our people in the small groups. Oh, all the pastors lead a small group? Who's pastoring your people? Somebody else. The tumultuous teenage years. Who's over them? A 19-year-old with really nice hair who plays the guitar. Proverbs 13:20. He who walks with wise men will be wise. Why do the boys act like boys? Because that's all they have in their life are boys. And look, as I've studied, I am not an elder. I am under elders. Heart Cry is under elders. I am not an elder. Why are you not an elder? People always say that. And I go, well, I work under the elders to take care of all the mission things that they have assigned to me and all the things. But you ought to be an elder, a preaching elder. I said, so there are preaching elders who don't pastor? I'm like a hired gun? What? No. An elder is an elder is an elder. You know, I saw in one church, elder of marketing. What? No, look, just realize something. What everybody thinks is the big thing is not the big thing at all. They're
through empty alleyways, shadows dance in holographic twilight, silent screams beneath the cracked surface, electric scars on concrete veins pulsing, digital ghosts haunting these broken streets. Lights fade, whisper scream lost in static haze, voices echo longing traces in the air. Spirits rise, neon skies, dreams in disarray. Echoes of the night calling, can't escape despair. Winding roads through virtual despair. Broken hearts left in empty squares. Faceless eyes watching from down corners. Synthetic love disintegrates like morning fog. Shadows dance in holographic twilight. Silence screams beneath the cracks of faded moon. Lonely hearts trapped in mirror reflections. Lifeless eyes staring into neon gloom. Lights fade, whispers scream, lost in static haze. Voices echo, longing traces in the air. Spirits rise, neon skies, dreams in disarray. Echoes of the night calling, can't escape despair. Winding roads through virtual despair. Broken hearts left in empty squares. Faceless eyes watching from down corners. Synthetic love disintegrates like morning fog. Flicker in the distance, a warmth breaks the night. A single bloom pushing through cracked concrete, a fight for something real, a touch, a connection untold. A melody breaks the silence, a story to unfold. A ragged voice, a lone guitar, a song in the square. Singing of hope of breaking free, a dream to repair. The lonely gather, drawn by the sound. Faces light up, shadows retreat from hallowed ground. Lights flicker, whispers rise above the static fight. Voices join the chorus, the symphony takes flight. Spirits soar, neon sky, dreams ignite the night. Echoes of the night calling, can't stare us in the light. In the heart of the silicon, a crack begins to mend. As humans spark the firefly, a love that will transcend the artificial night. A city starts to breathe,